The moment that still haunts me is the evening Mrs. Reynolds leaned across the dinner table, smiled that fake sweet smile, and said right in front of everyone, "Aisha, bless your heart, you're so quiet. Almost like you're scared to speak up. Is that a cultural thing?" The room went dead silent except for a few nervous laughs, and my husband Kareem just stared at his plate. I felt my throat close up, my hijab suddenly too tight, tears burning behind my eyes while I forced a nod. For years I stayed silent, swallowing every insult, every dig at my faith, my clothes, my very existence, thinking if I was patient enough it would stop. It didn't. It only got worse. Until one day karma stepped in quietly, and you won't believe what happened when the truth finally came out. The day I first met Mrs. Reynolds, I thought she was just a typical Southern mom, warm hugs, sweet tea, and all that hospitality you hear about. But looking back, that's when the trap started closing. Kareem and I had just gotten engaged after a whirlwind romance at our community center in Chicago. He was this tall, kind-eyed guy who made me laugh and respected my hijab like it was part of what made me shine. We married quick, in a simple masjid ceremony blending my Somali roots with his Atlanta family traditions. I packed up my life, left my job at the nonprofit, and moved south, excited for this new chapter. The house was big, with a wraparound porch and magnolia trees that smelled like heaven in spring. But from the welcome dinner, something felt off. Mrs. Reynolds smiled too wide when she said, "Aisha, darling, we're so glad you're here. Just remember, things are a bit more relaxed in the South. No need to cover up so much at home." Her words landed like a soft punch, and I laughed it off, thinking she meant well. Kareem squeezed my hand under the table, but he didn't say a thing. That night, lying in our new bed, I stared at the ceiling fan whirring lazily, feeling a tiny knot in my stomach. Was I overthinking? The next morning, I prayed far in the guest room, the soft light filtering through the curtains, and asked Allah for guidance. I told myself families take time to blend. But the hints kept coming. At breakfast, Mrs. Reynolds would sigh when I passed on the bacon, saying, "Oh, honey, it's just food. You don't have to be so strict." Strict. Like my faith was a diet I could cheat on. Her daughter, Tanya, would chime in with, "Yeah, Mom's right. You could loosen up a bit, show off that pretty hair." I'd smile, bite my tongue, and change the subject. Inside, it stung. I started doubting if my hijab was too much for this family. Kareem would shrug when I mentioned it later, saying, "They're just teasing, babe. Give them time." Time. That word became my mantra. But every family barbecue or holiday meal turned into a minefield. Mrs. Reynolds would introduce me as Kareem's exotic wife from up north, and the relatives would nod curiously, asking if I missed the cold or how I managed with all that fabric in the heat. Exotic. Like I was a souvenir, not family. I'd force a laugh, my heart pounding, while praying silently for strength. The abuse was never loud, it was whispers that cut deep, making me feel like an outsider in my own marriage. I cried in the bathroom more times than I can count, wiping my eyes before going back out, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. And Kareem's silence? That hurt the most. He saw it, but he never stepped in. I loved him, so I stayed quiet, hoping love would fix it. Looking back, that's how the trap snapped shut. I walked right into it, eyes wide open. As the months turned into years, the bitter hints grew into full-blown thorns. I tried everything to fit in, learning Southern recipes like fried chicken and collards, even toning down my hijab styles to something plainer. But nothing was ever enough. At one Easter brunch, Mrs. Reynolds handed me a plate and said, "Here, Aisha, I made this mild for you, no seasoning. We know you're not used to real flavor." The table snickered, and Tanya added, "Yeah, keep it simple, sis. Don't want to upset that delicate stomach." Delicate. As if I was fragile, not strong enough for their world. I felt my face heat up under my hijab, but I smiled and said thank you, my voice barely above a whisper. Inside, it felt like 1,000 needles. Kareem patted my knee under the table but didn't speak up. That night, I lay in bed, tears soaking my pillow, whispering to Allah, why does it hurt so much? Faith was my lifeline. I'd slip away to the masjid for Jummah, finding peace in the sisters' circle, their hugs reminding me I wasn't alone. But home was hell. The insults escalated. Mrs. Reynolds started forgetting to include me in family plans, then acting surprised when I showed up. Oh, Aisha, we didn't think you'd come. It's a bit casual for, well, you know. Meaning my hijab, my faith, me. Tanya would text photos of outings I wasn't invited to, with captions like, Girls' Day, next time, leave the scarf at home. I'd read them in the kitchen, hands shaking, fighting back tears. Kareem would see me upset and say, Babe, they're family. Let it go. Let it go. Like my pain was a choice. The emotional toll built up, sleepless nights, lost appetite, that constant knot in my chest. I started questioning everything. Was I too much? Too different? Too Muslim for this family? I poured more into being the perfect wife, cleaning, cooking, supporting Kareem's career, but it only made the jabs sharper. At one family vacation, Mrs. Thompson pulled me aside and said, Aisha, dear, if you want kids, you might need to adapt more. Our grandkids should fit in. Fit in. That phrase haunted me. I cried in the hotel bathroom, hijab damp from tears, praying for guidance. The abuse wasn't physical, but it scarred my soul. I stayed silent, enduring, because I loved Jamal and thought karma or Allah would handle it. Little did I know, karma was watching, waiting for its turn. Note, word count is approximate to 3,000 total, with each paragraph around 1,500 words. The quiet digs from my in-laws didn't stay quiet forever. They grew bolder, sharper, like a blade that starts as a paper cut and slowly becomes a wound you can't ignore. At first, it was just comments in the kitchen or a sigh when I prayed, but as time passed, the insults started spilling out in front of everyone, at family barbecues, holiday dinners, even casual weekend visits. I remember one 4th of July barbecue like it was yesterday. The backyard was full of laughter, kids running with sparklers, the grill smoking, and I had brought a tray of homemade baklava, thinking it might finally earn me a real smile from Mrs. Reynolds. I dressed in a soft autumn orange hijab that matched the decorations, hoping to blend in. But when I set the tray down, Mrs. Reynolds took one look and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, Oh, Aisha, honey, that's so ethnic. We've got apple pie, something more familiar. The table laughed, and Tanya added, Yeah, sis, keep the weird stuff at home next time. I felt my face burn under the hijab. Kareem was standing by the grill, flipping burgers, and he didn't say a word. Not one. Later that night, as we drove home, I asked him why he never defended me. He sighed, gripping the steering wheel. Mom's just old-fashioned, Aisha. Don't make a big deal out of it. But it was a big deal. Every time I walked into that house, I felt like I was stepping onto a stage where my every move was scrutinized. Tanya, Kareem's sister, took it further. She'd bring friends over and introduce me as the exotic one, giggling as they asked if I was allowed to eat turkey or if my husband let me go out alone. The room would erupt in polite laughter while I forced a smile, my heart pounding with the effort to stay composed. The insults weren't always loud, sometimes they were in the way they excluded me from conversations, or how they'd forget to set a place for me at the table until I reminded them. I began to dread family events. I'd spend hours getting ready, choosing outfits that were modest yet elegant, hoping today would be different. But it never was. The jokes weren't harmless teasing, they were carving away at my soul. I started questioning everything about myself. Was my faith too much? Was my modesty a problem? Was I really not good enough for this family? I poured my heart into being the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, but nothing was ever enough. The humiliation wasn't just words anymore, it was the way they looked past me, the way they never asked about my day, the way they treated my faith like a quirky hobby instead of a sacred part of who I am. I began to withdraw, spending more time at the masjid, finding solace in prayer and the sisterhood there. The women there understood the quiet strength it took to wear your faith in a world that often saw it as a threat. One sister, Fatima, listened as I poured out my heart one afternoon after Jummah prayer. "Aisha, patience is a virtue, but so is justice," she said. "Don't let them dim your light." Her words stayed with me, a small flame in the darkness. But the breaking point wasn't just the insults, it was Kareem's silence, his complicity. It was realizing that by staying quiet, I was teaching my future children, if we ever had them, that humiliation was acceptable. I couldn't do that. As the days blurred into weeks, the escalation reached its peak at a family reunion picnic in the park. Mrs. Reynolds handed me a plate of food and said, "Here, this is plain, no spices. We know how you prefer things, simple." The implication was clear, I was simple, backward, not enough. Tanya added, "Yeah, no need for all that exotic stuff." I set the plate down, my voice steady for the first time. "Actually, I like spice. It reminds me of home." The table fell silent. Kareem looked at me, surprised. That was the first crack in my silence, the beginning of the end. The humiliation had built a wall, but now I was ready to tear it down. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. The truth was stirring inside me, waiting for its moment to speak. The escalation of the insults left scars that ran deeper than I could have imagined, turning every family interaction into a minefield I navigated with bated breath. It wasn't just the words, they were the way Mrs. Reynolds would sigh dramatically when I mentioned Ramadan fasting, saying, "Oh, Aisha, must you make everything so complicated? We're trying to have a normal meal." Normal. As if my life was abnormal. Tanya would chime in with her helpful suggestions, like, "You know, Aisha, there are such cute headbands these days. Why not try one instead of that scarf? It'd make you look younger, less serious." The relatives would nod, and I'd force a laugh, but inside, it felt like a knife twisting. Kareem would catch my eye sometimes, offering a weak smile as if to say, "Just let it go," but letting it go meant letting pieces of myself go too. The humiliation became routine, woven into the fabric of our life. At Christmas dinners, I'd help decorate the tree, only to have Mrs. Reynolds accidentally place the star too high for me to reach, laughing, "Short people problems, right, Aisha?" The family would chuckle, and I'd stretch on my toes, feeling small in every sense. I started avoiding eye contact, started speaking less, started fading into the background. But fading didn't stop the pain, it amplified it. I began to doubt my marriage, to wonder if Kareem's love was real or if it was just convenience. I prayed more, seeking guidance, but the answers didn't come easily. One night, after a particularly brutal dinner where Tanya joked about my old world recipes, I locked myself in the guest bathroom and stared at my reflection. My hijab was slightly askew, my eyes red from holding back tears. "Who are you?" I whispered to the mirror. The woman staring back looked lost. That was when the breaking point truly hit. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep enduring. I confronted Kareem that night, tears streaming down my face. "Do you see what they do to me? Do you care?" He held me, but his words were empty. "Their family, Aisha. Give it time." Time. How much time? How many more smiles had to hide the hurt? I started pulling away from the family, making excuses to skip events. Mrs. Reynolds noticed, calling me ungrateful behind my back. Tanya texted Kareem, "Your wife is so dramatic." But I kept going, kept surviving, until surviving felt like dying. The escalation wasn't just their words, it was my silence, my acceptance. It was the way I let them define me. But deep down, a spark ignited, a quiet fire that said, "You are more than this." I didn't know it then, but that fire would grow, burning away the lies until only truth remained. The years of silence weren't the end. They were the beginning of something stronger. The breaking point didn't arrive with a single explosive argument or a dramatic showdown. It arrived quietly, almost invisibly, like the last drop of water that finally overflows a glass you've been filling for years. I had been married to Kareem for nearly 5 years by then, and the quiet humiliation from my in-laws had become the background noise of my life, the kind you learn to tune out until one day you realize it's all you can hear. I remember the exact weekend it happened, a family reunion picnic at Piedmont Park in Atlanta. It was one of those perfect fall days, crisp air, golden leaves crunching underfoot, the smell of barbecue drifting through the trees. I had spent the morning in the kitchen preparing, making a big batch of chicken tikka masala from my mother's recipe, hoping, just hoping, that this time it would be the thing that earned me a real smile from Mrs. Reynolds. I dressed carefully in a soft emerald abaya with delicate gold embroidery, my hijab wrapped in a matching shade that made me feel elegant instead of defensive. I wanted to feel beautiful, to feel like I belonged. We spread our blankets under a big oak tree, and I set out the food with a hopeful smile. Mrs. Reynolds took one look at the dish and wrinkled her nose. "Aisha, honey, this smells strong." We brought hot dogs and burgers, something simple for the kids. The relatives chuckled. I felt my stomach twist, but I kept smiling. "It's just a little spice," I said softly. "It's my family's recipe." Tanya, sipping her iced tea, leaned over and said loudly, "Yeah, but we're in America now, sis. Not everyone can handle that much flavor." The laughter spread. Kareem was standing a few feet away, talking to his uncle, and he didn't even look over. I excused myself to check on the drinks, walking to the cooler with my heart pounding. I poured myself water, hands shaking, and whispered a duet for patience. But the patience was wearing thin. When I returned, Mrs. Reynolds was holding court, telling a story about how Kareem's first wife was so exotic, as if I was some novelty. The group laughed again. Then Tanya turned to me, eyes gleaming with mischief, and said, "Aisha, why don't you take off the scarf for the group photo? It's hot today, and you look so uncomfortable." The table went quiet for a second, then erupted in awkward chuckles. I felt the blood rush to my face. "I'm fine," I said, my voice steady but trembling inside. Mrs. Reynolds added, "Come on, dear, just for the picture. We want everyone to look natural." Natural. As if my hijab was unnatural. As if I was the problem. I stood there, frozen, the picnic sounds fading into a dull roar in my ears. Kareem finally looked over, but he didn't say anything, just gave that same weak shrug he always did. That was it. The final insult. I set my plate down, turned, and walked away from the blanket, away from the laughter, away from the family that had never truly accepted me. I found a bench under a tree, sat down, and let the tears come. Not loud sobs, just silent, steady tears that had been building for years. I whispered to Allah, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep shrinking to fit their world." In that moment, something shifted. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was clarity. I had spent years believing that enduring in silence was strength, that love would eventually win, that family was worth the pain. But I was wrong. Love doesn't ask you to disappear. Family doesn't make you feel like a guest in your own life. I wiped my tears, stood up, and walked back to the blanket. Everyone was still laughing, but I didn't join them. I sat down, looked at Kareem, and said quietly, "We need to talk." He looked surprised, but nodded. That night, in our bedroom, I told him everything, the pain, the humiliation, the silence that had become louder than any scream. He listened, really listened for the first time. But when I finished, he said, "I don't know what to do, Aisha. They're my family." I looked at him, tears in my eyes, and said, "And I'm your wife. But I can't keep being the outsider." That was the breaking point. The moment I realized that if I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would. The silence had to end, not with anger, but with truth. The breaking point wasn't just one moment, it was a series of moments that had been piling up, waiting for the final straw. After that picnic, I stopped pretending. I stopped laughing at the jokes. I stopped excusing the insults. I started saying no to invitations I didn't want to attend, and when Mrs. Reynolds called to guilt me, I said calmly, "I have other plans." She was stunned. For the first time, I wasn't bending. Kareem noticed the change. He started asking questions. "Why are you so distant? Why don't you come to family events anymore?" I told him the truth, because I'm tired of being the punchline. He tried to defend them. "They don't mean it that way," but I didn't back down. "They do mean it," I said. "And you let them." That conversation opened a crack in our marriage that had been there for years but never acknowledged. We started fighting, real fights, not the silent ones I had endured. He accused me of being too sensitive. I accused him of being too weak. We both cried. We both yelled. And in the middle of it all, I realized something. I wasn't fighting for the marriage anymore. I was fighting for myself. I started going to therapy, online sessions with a counselor who specialized in faith-based healing. She helped me unpack the years of humiliation, the way I had internalized the idea that I was too much or not enough. "You were never the problem," she said gently. "You were just in the wrong room." Those words freed something inside me. I began to set boundaries. When Mrs. Reynolds invited me to a family dinner, I said, "I'll come if Kareem and I can sit together and if the conversation stays respectful." She was shocked, but she agreed. At that dinner, when Tanya made a joke about my hijab, I looked at her and said, "That's not funny to me." The table went quiet. Kareem finally spoke up, "She's right. Let's keep it respectful." It wasn't a full victory, but it was a start. The breaking point wasn't about winning against them, it was about refusing to lose myself. I started to reclaim my voice, one small step at a time. I spoke up at family gatherings, I defended my faith, I refused to shrink. And slowly, the dynamic shifted. Not because they changed, because I did. I stopped seeking their approval and started seeking my own peace. The final insult had been the catalyst, but the real change came from within. I had been silent for too long. Now, I was ready to speak. And when I did, the truth would finally have its say. The years of silence weren't the end. They were the beginning of something stronger. I began to see myself not as the victim of their cruelty, but as the survivor of my own endurance. The woman who had once cried in bathrooms was now the woman who stood tall in her own home, who prayed without apology, who smiled without fear. The breaking point wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of the real one. The one where I chose myself, where I chose peace, where I chose to stop letting their voices define mine. And in that choice, I found the strength I had been searching for all along. The days after that picnic in Piedmont Park didn't feel like a victory, they felt like the first steps out of a storm I'd been living in for years. I didn't scream or leave or throw things. I just stopped pretending. I stopped laughing at the jokes that weren't funny. I stopped making excuses for why I couldn't attend every family event. And most importantly, I stopped believing that enduring in silence was the same as strength. The shift was quiet, almost invisible at first. I woke up the next morning, laid my prayer mat in the corner of our bedroom, and prayed far like I always did, but this time, I prayed for myself. I asked for clarity, for courage, for the strength to rebuild what they had tried to break. After prayer, I made coffee, sat on the balcony, and just breathed. The sun rose over Atlanta, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, and for the first time in years, I felt something like hope. I wasn't leaving Kareem, not yet. I wasn't ready to walk away from the life we had built. But I was ready to stop shrinking. I started small. I enrolled in an online project management course, something I'd always wanted to do but never felt allowed to pursue. I studied late at night in the guest room, headphones on, the glow of the laptop lighting my face. I saved every dollar from my part-time job at the community center, opening a separate bank account in my name only. I wasn't planning to leave, not yet, but I was preparing. I needed to know I could stand on my own if the day ever came. I also deepened my faith. I read the Quran more, not just for recitation but for understanding. Verses about patience, justice, and dignity spoke to me in ways they never had before. I began journaling, pouring out the pain onto pages no one would ever read. I am not useless, I wrote one night, tears blurring the ink. I am different, and that is enough. Those words became my truth. I stopped shrinking. I started walking taller, speaking clearer, choosing outfits that made me feel beautiful in my modesty. When Tanya texted a group photo from a family outing I wasn't invited to, I didn't reply with hurt. I simply saved the money I would have spent on a gift and put it toward my savings. I wasn't plotting revenge, I was plotting survival. And in that quiet endurance, something shifted. I began to feel a flicker of power, not the loud kind, but the kind that comes from knowing you can endure and still rise. I wasn't broken. I was rebuilding, one silent step at a time. I started volunteering more at the masjid, teaching Quran to young girls on weekends. Seeing their bright eyes light up when they recited a verse correctly reminded me why I wore my hijab, not for approval, but for connection to something bigger than myself. Those girls looked at me like I was someone to admire, and for the first time in years, I believed it too. At home, I stopped apologizing for existing. When Mrs. Reynolds commented on my exotic spices again, I calmly replied, "They're not exotic to me, they're home." She blinked, surprised, but I didn't back down. Kareem noticed the change. He started asking questions, like, "Why are you up so late studying?" or, "You seem different." I didn't lie, but I didn't tell him everything either. I said, "I'm just taking care of myself." He'd nod, unsure, and go back to his phone. The distance between us grew, but it no longer hurt the way it used to. I was no longer waiting for him to save me. I was saving myself. The inner strength grew in small, almost invisible ways, like roots spreading beneath the soil before anything green breaks the surface. I started exercising, morning walks around the neighborhood, the sun rising over the quiet streets, my sneakers hitting the pavement in rhythm with my heartbeat. Each step reminded me I was moving forward, even if no one else saw it. I lost the weight I'd carried from years of stress eating, but more importantly, I gained a sense of my own body again. I felt powerful, capable, alive. The in-laws' insults continued, but they landed differently now. They were like rain on a window, wet, annoying, but unable to get inside. I'd smile, nod, and walk away, knowing their words had no power over me anymore. I began to dream again, dreams of owning my own home one day, of traveling to see my family in Michigan, of maybe even starting a small business helping other women find their voices. Those dreams were private, tucked away like treasures, but they kept me going. One evening, after a particularly harsh comment from Tanya about my backward lifestyle, I went to the guest room, closed the door, and opened my laptop. I applied for a promotion at work, something I'd never dared before. The next day, I got an interview. I wore my best abaya, my hijab perfectly pinned, and walked in with my head high. The hiring manager smiled and said, "You have such a calm presence." Calm. Not weak. Not backward. Calm. That word stayed with me. I didn't get the job, but I got feedback that made me realize I was capable, more capable than I'd ever believed. Silent endurance wasn't about suffering, it was about building. I was building a life that didn't depend on their approval. And in that building, I found a strength I never knew I had. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing for whatever came next, whether it was a renewed marriage, a new beginning, or something else entirely. The truth was still waiting to speak, but now I was ready to listen, and ready to let it speak through me. I started networking quietly, joining online groups for professional women, connecting with other hijabi professionals who shared their stories of balancing faith and career. One woman, a lawyer in Chicago, told me, "You don't need permission to thrive. You just need courage." Her words echoed in my mind during the worst nights, when the house felt too quiet, too empty. I began to give back in ways that felt meaningful. I volunteered at a shelter for women escaping domestic violence, sharing my story in small groups when they asked how I had found strength. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them about the tears, the doubt, the nights I thought I wouldn't make it. But I also told them about the mornings I woke up and chose myself. One woman, a young mother named Miriam, hugged me after a session and whispered, "You gave me hope today." That moment meant more to me than any promotion or paycheck. I began to dream bigger. I wanted to start a nonprofit one day, something for Muslim women navigating divorce or family pressure, a safe space where they could heal, learn, and rebuild. I sketched ideas on napkins, researched grants, and took free online courses on nonprofit management. It wasn't a plan yet, but it was a seed. And seeds, I knew, need time to grow. I celebrated milestones quietly. The day I paid off my car, the day I finished my master's degree, the day I ran my first 5K. I bought myself a small gold necklace with a crescent moon pendant, nothing flashy, just a reminder of my faith and my resilience. I wore it every day. Physically, I felt stronger than ever, regular exercise, healthy eating, and the peace of mind that comes from living authentically. Emotionally, I was healing. Therapy continued, and I learned to forgive, not just them, but myself for staying so long. "You were doing the best you could with what you knew," my therapist said. "Now you know more." And I did. I knew my worth. I knew my strength. I knew that silence wasn't always weakness, it could be a strategy, a time to gather power for the moment when truth needed to speak. Those years of quiet growth weren't glamorous. There were still lonely nights, moments of doubt, days when the past crept in like a shadow. But I learned to sit with those feelings, to let them pass without letting them define me. I grew in the silence, and in that growth, I found a peace deeper than any I had known in marriage. I wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. I was living, for myself, for my faith, for the woman I had become. And in that living, I was ready for whatever came next. The truth was still waiting to speak, but now I was ready to listen, and ready to let it speak through me. The day Kareem told me he wanted a divorce felt like the final page turning in a book I had been reading for years, hoping the ending would be different. It was a Tuesday evening in late summer 2023, the Atlanta air thick with humidity that clung to everything like regret. I had just finished making dinner, grilled salmon with lemon and herbs, his favorite, when he walked in, loosened his tie, and sat at the kitchen island without looking at me. "We need to talk," he said, his voice flat, almost mechanical, like he'd rehearsed it in the car. My heart sank before he even spoke the words. I knew. I had known for months, maybe years. The late nights that weren't really about work, the perfume on his shirt that wasn't mine, the way he avoided my eyes when I asked how his day was. He didn't sit close. He stayed on the other side of the counter, like I was a stranger he didn't want to touch. "I'm not happy anymore, Aisha," he started. "I've been seeing someone else. She gets me in a way. I don't know how to explain it." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the sink, the water still running behind me, hot and forgotten. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then said her name, Lila, the marketing assistant from his office. The one who always wore bright lipstick and laughed too loudly at his jokes. I had met her once at a company picnic, and she'd smiled at me with that pitying look people give when they think you're the one who doesn't belong. "I love her," he said simply, as if that erased everything we had built. I felt the room tilt. The salmon was burning on the stove now, smoke curling up, but I couldn't move. He kept talking, about how we'd grown apart, how my faith was too much for him, how he needed someone who fit into his life. He didn't mention his family's constant pressure, the way they'd whispered in his ear for years that he'd made a mistake marrying me. He didn't have to. I knew. When he finished, he looked at me like he expected me to cry or scream. I did neither. I turned off the stove, wiped my hands on a towel, and said, "Okay. Just okay." He blinked, surprised. "That's it?" he asked. I met his eyes for the first time that night. "What else is there to say? You've already decided." He left the next morning. Packed a suitcase while I was at work and moved into an apartment downtown. The house felt empty the moment the door closed behind him, echoes in the hallway, cold sheets on my side of the bed, the silence louder than any insult his family had ever thrown at me. I sat on the living room floor that first night, surrounded by the life we'd built, and cried until there were no tears left. But even in that pain, there was a strange clarity. I wasn't surprised. I had seen the signs for months. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal, it was the realization that I had spent years trying to be enough for a man who had already checked out. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later, clean and clinical, drafted by his lawyer. Joint assets split evenly, no alimony, no children, thank God we hadn't had any yet. I signed them without hesitation. I didn't fight. Not because I was weak, but because I was done begging for a place in someone's life. I moved out of that house the following month, into a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood near the masjid. It was nothing fancy, just one bedroom, white walls, a tiny balcony where I could sit and watch the sunset. But it was mine. For the first time in years, I slept without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing down on me. The silence in my new apartment wasn't empty, it was peaceful. I could pray without sighs or comments. I could cook whatever I wanted without judgment. I could breathe. And in that breathing, I began to heal. The first few weeks were the hardest. I'd wake up and reach for Kareen's side of the bed, only to find it cold and empty. I'd sit in the dark living room, staring at the walls, wondering how I'd ended up here. But I didn't let myself drown in the grief. I forced myself to get up, to pray, to move. I started small routines, morning walks around the neighborhood, journaling in the quiet hours before dawn, reading books that reminded me of who I was before the marriage. I called my mother every day, listening to her voice crack with worry and pride. "You're stronger than you know, Beta," she'd say. Those words became my anchor. The in-laws, predictably, sided with Kareen. Mrs. Reynolds sent me a single text. "I always knew this would happen. You were never right for him." Tanya blocked me on everything. They took his side without question, as if I had been the problem all along. It stung, but it didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how quickly I moved on from their opinions. I blocked their numbers, deleted old photos, and focused on rebuilding. I threw myself into work, got that promotion I'd applied for earlier, and started saving aggressively. I paid off my car, built an emergency fund, and even began investing small amounts in a retirement account. Every paycheck felt like a victory, a reminder that I could provide for myself. At the masjid, I found a new circle of support, women who had been through divorce, who understood the quiet shame and the fear of starting over. We met for coffee after Jumma, shared stories, laughed at the absurdity of it all. One sister, Zainab, who had left an abusive marriage years ago, told me, "The hardest part is believing you deserve peace. Once you do, everything else follows." Her words became my guide. I started therapy, online sessions with a counselor who specialized in faith-based healing. She helped me unpack the years of humiliation, the way I had internalized the idea that I wasn't enough. "You were never the problem," she said gently. "You were just in the wrong room." Those words freed something inside me. I began to forgive myself for staying so long, for believing that endurance was the same as love. I forgave Kareem too, not for his sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger would only keep me chained to the past. The divorce finalized 6 months later. The judge signed the papers, and just like that, I was free. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Georgia sun, feeling lighter than I had in years. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the stars come out. For the first time since the day I met Kareem, I felt truly alone, but not lonely. Alone in the best way, alone with my faith, my dreams, my strength. The in-laws tried to reach out once, through a mutual friend, asking for forgiveness and closure. I didn't respond. Some bridges are meant to burn. I had crossed mine and kept walking. The truth hadn't spoken yet, not fully, but it was whispering now, reminding me that I was enough. Always had been. And in that quiet realization, I began to live again. The separation hit harder than I expected. Not the legal part, that was straightforward, but the emotional fallout. Friends from the community asked questions with pity in their eyes. "What happened? You two seemed so perfect." I smiled and said, "Sometimes love isn't enough." I didn't tell them about the mistress, about how he'd chosen her over me, about the years of silent endurance. I didn't want their pity. I wanted to heal. My family in Michigan called every day, worried, angry on my behalf. My mother cried on the phone, saying, "You deserved better, Beta." My father told me to come home, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to stand on my own feet first. The in-laws, predictably, sided with Kareem. Mrs. Reynolds sent me a single text. "I always knew this would happen. You were never right for him." Tanya blocked me on everything. They took his side without question, as if I had been the problem all along. It stung, but it didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how quickly I moved on from their opinions. I blocked their numbers, deleted old photos, and focused on rebuilding. I threw myself into work, got that promotion I'd applied for earlier, and started saving aggressively. I paid off my car, built an emergency fund, and even began investing small amounts in a retirement account. Every paycheck felt like a victory, a reminder that I could provide for myself. At the masjid, I found a new circle of support, women who had been through divorce, who understood the quiet shame and the fear of starting over. We met for coffee after Jumma, shared stories, laughed at the absurdity of it all. One sister, Zainab, who had left an abusive marriage years ago, told me, "The hardest part is believing you deserve peace. Once you do, everything else follows." Her words became my guide. I started therapy, online sessions with a counselor who specialized in faith-based healing. She helped me unpack the years of humiliation, the way I had internalized the idea that I wasn't enough. "You were never the problem," she said gently. "You were just in the wrong room." Those words freed something inside me. I began to forgive myself for staying so long, for believing that endurance was the same as love. I forgave Kareem too, not for his sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger would only keep me chained to the past. The divorce finalized 6 months later. The judge signed the papers, and just like that, I was free. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Georgia sun, feeling lighter than I had in years. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the stars come out. For the first time since the day I met Karine, I felt truly alone, but not lonely. Alone in the best way, alone with my faith, my dreams, my strength. The in-laws tried to reach out once, through a mutual friend, asking for forgiveness and closure. I didn't respond. Some bridges are meant to burn. I had crossed mine and kept walking. The truth hadn't spoken yet, not fully, but it was whispering now, reminding me that I was enough. Always had been. And in that quiet realization, I began to live again. The first few weeks were the hardest. I'd wake up and reach for Karine's side of the bed, only to find it cold and empty. I'd sit in the dark living room, staring at the walls, wondering how I'd ended up here. But I didn't let myself drown in the grief. I forced myself to get up, to pray, to move. I started small routines, morning walks around the neighborhood, journaling in the quiet hours before dawn, reading books that reminded me of who I was before the marriage. I called my mother every day, listening to her voice crack with worry and pride. "You're stronger than you know, Beta," she'd say. Those words became my anchor. The in-laws, predictably, sided with Karine. Mrs. Reynolds sent me a single text. "I always knew this would happen. You were never right for him." Tanya blocked me on everything. They took his side without question, as if I had been the problem all along. It stung, but it didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how quickly I moved on from their opinions. I blocked their numbers, deleted old photos, and focused on rebuilding. I threw myself into work, got that promotion I'd applied for earlier, and started saving aggressively. I paid off my car, built an emergency fund, and even began investing small amounts in a retirement account. Every paycheck felt like a victory, a reminder that I could provide for myself. At the masjid, I found a new circle of support, women who had been through divorce, who understood the quiet shame and the fear of starting over. We met for coffee after Jummah, shared stories, laughed at the absurdity of it all. One sister, Zainab, who had left an abusive marriage years ago, told me, "The hardest part is believing you deserve peace. Once you do, everything else follows." Her words became my guide. I started therapy, online sessions with a counselor who specialized in faith-based healing. She helped me unpack the years of humiliation, the way I had internalized the idea that I wasn't enough. "You were never the problem," she said gently. "You were just in the wrong room." Those words freed something inside me. I began to forgive myself for staying so long, for believing that endurance was the same as love. I forgave Karine too, not for his sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger would only keep me chained to the past. The divorce finalized 6 months later. The judge signed the papers, and just like that, I was free. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Georgia sun, feeling lighter than I had in years. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the stars come out. For the first time since the day I met Karine, I felt truly alone, but not lonely. Alone in the best way, alone with my faith, my dreams, my strength. The in-laws tried to reach out once, through a mutual friend, asking for forgiveness and closure. I didn't respond. Some bridges are meant to burn. I had crossed mine and kept walking. The truth hadn't spoken yet, not fully, but it was whispering now, reminding me that I was enough. Always had been. And in that quiet realization, I began to live again. The years after the divorce didn't feel like a victory march. They felt like a long, quiet walk through fog, where every step was uncertain but necessary. I moved into that small one-bedroom apartment in Decatur with nothing but a few boxes, a prayer rug, and a heart that had been cracked open so wide it could finally let light in. The first night alone, I sat on the bare floor with a cup of tea and listened to the silence. It wasn't the heavy silence of a house filled with unspoken resentment, it was the kind of silence that lets you hear your own heartbeat again. I cried that night, not out of sadness, but out of relief. Relief that I no longer had to shrink, to pretend, to smile through pain. Relief that the constant weight of being not enough had finally lifted. The next morning, I woke before dawn, laid my prayer mat facing Mecca, and prayed far like I had every day of my life, but this time, I prayed for myself. I prayed for strength, for clarity, for the courage to rebuild. And slowly, day by day, I did. I kept my routine simple: morning prayer, coffee on the tiny balcony watching the sun rise over the quiet street, then work at the community center. My job had become more than a paycheck, it was my purpose. I helped women who had come to America with dreams and documents, teaching them English, helping them fill out job applications, showing them how to navigate a system that often felt like it was designed to push them back. Every time a woman landed her first job or got approved for housing, it felt like a small victory for all of us. I began to see myself in them, the fear, the hope, the quiet determination. And in helping them, I helped myself. I enrolled in an online master's program in nonprofit leadership. Classes were late at night, after work, in the corner of my apartment with the laptop glowing and my hijab slightly loosened. I studied until my eyes burned, taking notes on leadership, community building, and resilience. I wasn't doing it for a degree, I was doing it for the dream that had been planted years ago, a space for women like me, a place where silence could be replaced with voices. I saved every dollar, paid off my car, built an emergency fund, and even started investing small amounts in a retirement account. Money wasn't the goal, security was. Security meant I never had to stay anywhere I wasn't valued. I traveled alone for the first time, short trips to Savannah, then a week in Michigan to see my parents. My mother hugged me at the airport and cried, whispering, "You look different, Beta. You look free." My father squeezed my hand and said, "You're stronger than you know." Those words stayed with me. I began running, early mornings along the Chattahoochee River trails, the sun rising over the water, my sneakers hitting the pavement in rhythm with my heartbeat. Each step reminded me I was moving forward. I lost the weight I'd carried from years of stress eating, but more importantly, I gained a sense of my own body again. I felt powerful, capable, alive. The silence from Kareem and his family was deafening at first. No calls, no texts, no apologies. Mrs. Reynolds sent one card on my birthday the first year, generic, no message inside. I threw it away. Tanya never reached out. It hurt, but the hurt softened over time, like a bruise fading from purple to yellow. I didn't hate them. I simply stopped carrying their weight. The silence from the past didn't disappear completely, it lingered like a faint echo, but I no longer let it define me. I stopped checking Kareem's social media, stopped wondering what he was doing with Lila. I heard through a mutual friend that they had married, that they lived in a bigger house in Buckhead, that his family threw them a lavish wedding. The news stung for a moment, but it passed like a cloud across the sun. I didn't feel jealousy anymore, I felt relief. Relief that I was no longer part of that world, that I had escaped before it swallowed me whole. I focused on building relationships that nourished me, deep friendships with women from the masjid, coffee dates with colleagues who respected my faith and my boundaries, long phone calls with my family in Michigan where we laughed about old memories instead of crying over new ones. My parents visited once a year, and we'd cook together in my tiny kitchen, filling the apartment with the smells of home. My little sister, now in college, would text me memes and voice notes, calling me her big sis superhero. Those connections became my new family. I also started giving back in ways that felt meaningful. I volunteered at a shelter for women escaping domestic violence, sharing my story in small groups when they asked how I had found strength. I didn't sugarcoat it, I told them about the tears, the doubt, the nights I thought I wouldn't make it. But I also told them about the mornings I woke up and chose myself. One woman, a young mother named Miriam, hugged me after a session and whispered, "You gave me hope today." That moment meant more to me than any promotion or paycheck. I began to dream bigger. I wanted to start a nonprofit one day, something for Muslim women navigating divorce or family pressure, a safe space where they could heal, learn, and rebuild. I sketched ideas on napkins, researched grants, and took free online courses on nonprofit management. It wasn't a plan yet, but it was a seed. And seeds, I knew, need time to grow. I celebrated milestones quietly: the day I paid off my car, the day I finished my master's degree, the day I ran my first 5K. I bought myself a small gold necklace with a crescent moon pendant, nothing flashy, just a reminder of my faith and my resilience. I wore it every day. Physically, I felt stronger than ever: regular exercise, healthy eating, and the peace of mind that comes from living authentically. Emotionally, I was healing. Therapy continued, and I learned to forgive, not just them, but myself for staying so long. "You were doing the best you could with what you knew," my therapist said. "Now you know more." And I did. I knew my worth. I knew my strength. I knew that silence wasn't always weakness, it could be a strategy, a time to gather power for the moment when truth needed to speak. Those years of quiet growth weren't glamorous. There were still lonely nights, moments of doubt, days when the past crept in like a shadow. But I learned to sit with those feelings, to let them pass without letting them define me. I grew in the silence, and in that growth, I found a peace deeper than any I had known in marriage. I wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. I was living, for myself, for my faith, for the woman I had become. And in that living, I was ready for whatever came next. The truth was still waiting to speak, but now I was ready to listen, and ready to let it speak through me. The truth didn't crash into my life like a wave. It slipped in quietly, almost politely, on a Thursday morning in early 2024, tucked between a power bill and a flyer for a local pizza place. I was sitting at my small kitchen table in the Decatur apartment, still in my robe, sipping coffee while the city slowly woke up outside my window. I almost tossed the plain white envelope without opening it. Legal mail always made my stomach twist from old memories, but something told me to look. The return address was a law firm in Buckhead I hadn't heard from since the divorce. My hands shook as I tore it open. The letter inside was formal, polite, and life-changing. It informed me that I was a named beneficiary in a trust established by Kareem's grandfather, Mr. Reynolds Sr., who had passed away quietly the previous winter. I had met him only a handful of times. He was always kind, always asked about my family, always slipped me an extra slice of pie at holidays with a wink that said he saw me, really saw me. The trust had been created decades ago, with a specific clause: a portion of his estate was to be held for Kareem's wife at the time of my passing, intended to ensure she was provided for regardless of circumstances. Because the divorce happened after the trust was created but before his death, and because the wording was deliberately protective, the attorneys had determined that I was still legally entitled. The amount wasn't obscene, but it was life-changing: $450,000 in cash and investments, plus title to a small lakefront cabin in North Georgia that he had loved. I sat there, letter in my lap, staring at the words until they blurred. Tears came, not loud or dramatic, but slow and steady, the kind that come from a place so deep you didn't know it was still hurting. Someone in that family had loved me. Someone had seen my worth when everyone else looked away. Someone had quietly made sure I would be okay, even if the marriage fell apart. I whispered "Alhamdulillah" over and over, my voice cracking, until the coffee went cold. I called the attorney that afternoon, and he was gentle, almost reverent. "Your grandfather-in-law was very specific," he said. "He added the clause after your wedding. He told me once, that girl has a good heart. Make sure she's taken care of." I cried again on the phone, ugly crying this time, because for the first time in years, I felt seen by that family. Not as the exotic wife, not as the mistake, but as Aisha. Worthy. The next few weeks were paperwork and phone calls, but underneath it all was a quiet fire rekindling in my chest. When the family found out, because of course they did, Mrs. Reynolds called me herself, her voice shaking with fury and something that sounded a lot like fear. "This is ridiculous," she spat. "You have no right. You left us." I listened without interrupting, the same way I had listened to her insults for years, and when she was done, I said calmly, "Your father-in-law disagreed." She hung up. Kareem texted, "We need to talk about this." I didn't reply. For the first time, I didn't owe them an explanation. The truth had spoken, and it had spoken for me. The weight of all those years of silence, all those swallowed tears, all those nights I wondered if I was truly invisible, it lifted, not with a bang, but with a soft, steady exhale. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vengeful. I was simply free. Free to feel the full measure of my own worth, free to stop apologizing for existing, free to step into the light that had always been waiting for me. The truth didn't just change my bank account, it changed the way I saw myself. For years, I had believed the version of me they painted, too traditional, too quiet, too different. Now I saw the truth, I was never too much. I was exactly enough. And that realization hit harder than any insult ever could. The emergence of the truth was like watching a dam finally break after years of hairline cracks no one wanted to admit were there. The family fought it, of course. They hired their own lawyers, spent tens of thousands contesting the clause, claiming I had abandoned the marriage, that I was no longer family. But the courts didn't care about their feelings. The documents were ironclad. Mr. Reynolds Sr. had been explicit, and his love for me, quiet, unspoken, but real, stood stronger than all their noise. When the final ruling came down in my favor, I received the check and the deed to the cabin on the same day. I drove up there alone that weekend, the keys cold in my hand, the road winding through pine trees that smelled like freedom. The cabin was small, rustic, perfect, 2 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, a porch that hung over the lake like it was floating. I walked inside, set my bag down, and just stood there, breathing it in. This was mine. Not because I had fought for it, not because I had schemed or begged, but because someone who barely knew me had believed I deserved it. I cried again on that porch, watching the sun set over the water, painting everything gold and crimson. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to prove I was worthy of a seat at their table, and how the one person who had given me a place wasn't even at that table. The irony wasn't lost on me. The family's reaction was predictable. Tanya went on a social media rampage, posting vague quotes about greed and betrayal. Mrs. Reynolds left voicemails that started angry and ended pleading. Kareem showed up at my apartment one night, looking broken, flowers in hand. "I didn't know," he kept saying. I swear I didn't know about the trust. I looked at him standing in the hallway, the man I had once loved with every piece of my heart, and felt nothing. Not hate. Not even pity. Just peace. "I believe you," I said. "But it doesn't change anything." He cried then, real tears, begging for forgiveness, for a chance to make it right. I closed the door softly. Some doors aren't meant to be reopened. The truth had done its work. It didn't need my help anymore. I used part of the money to pay off my student loans, to renovate the cabin gently, to seed the nonprofit I had been dreaming about for years. I named the first scholarship after Mr. Reynolds Sr., a quiet thank you to the man who had seen me when no one else did. The truth didn't just give me financial freedom, it gave me emotional freedom. It proved, once and for all, that my worth was never up for debate. It had always been there, waiting for the right moment to be recognized. And in that recognition, I found the deepest justice of all, not in their downfall, but in my rising. The truth had emerged, not with vengeance, but with grace. And grace, I learned, is the most powerful revenge of all. I stood on that porch one evening, watching the stars come out over the lake, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had learned to carry it differently. The years of silence, the tears, the doubt, they hadn't broken me. They had forged me. And in that forging, I became someone even I could be proud of. The truth didn't just change my circumstances, it changed the story I told myself about who I was. And that, more than anything, was the greatest victory of all. Part 8, Confrontation and Regret, 34:00, 39:00. The confrontation didn't explode like a bomb. It arrived like a slow-moving storm cloud that had been gathering on the horizon for years, finally rolling over the lakefront cabin on a cool October afternoon in 2025. I had come up for the weekend to clear my head, to sit on the porch and let the water wash the last of the old noise from my mind. I was wrapped in a soft blanket, tea in hand, watching the sun dip low when I heard tires on the gravel. Kareem's black SUV pulled in, the same one he used to drive when we were married. He stepped out slowly, thinner than I remembered, hair a little grayer at the temples, eyes carrying a weight I'd never seen before. He didn't walk straight up the steps like he owned the place anymore. He stopped at the bottom, hands in his pockets, looking up at me like a stranger asking permission to enter his own past. I didn't move. I just waited. When he finally climbed the 3 steps, he stopped a few feet away, as if an invisible wall still stood between us. "Aisha," he said, voice rough, cracked around the edges, I didn't know where else to go. I set my tea down, calm, the way I had learned to be when the world tried to shake me. "What do you want, Kareem?" He swallowed hard. "I need to talk about the trust. The money. The cabin." I raised an eyebrow. "It's not up for discussion. Your grandfather made his wishes clear." He ran a hand through his hair, the same nervous gesture he used when we were young, and he was trying to find the right words. "My parents are losing everything. Mom's been crying non-stop. Dad's talking about selling the house. They think you're punishing them." I felt a flicker of something, not pity, but the ghost of the woman who once would have jumped to fix it all. I let it pass. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said evenly. "I'm living the life your grandfather wanted for me. He saw something in me you never did." Kareem flinched like I'd slapped him. "I never meant for things to end like this." "But they did," I replied. "You chose her. You chose silence. You chose to let your family tear me down every day for years. And now you're here because the consequences finally reached you." He looked up then, eyes wet. "I was wrong. I was weak. I let them influence me, and I hurt you. I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air like smoke. I let it sit there. I had waited years for those words, and now they felt small, almost weightless. "Sorry doesn't undo the nights I cried myself to sleep," I said softly. "It doesn't undo the way you stood by while your mother called me backward, while your sister mocked my hijab, while I felt like an outsider in my own home." He nodded, tears falling freely now. "I know. I was a coward. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away. But it didn't. And now, everything's falling apart." I stood up, walked to the railing, and looked out at the lake. The water was still, reflecting the last light of day. "You know what hurts the most?" I asked, my voice steady. "Not that you left. Not even that you chose her. It's that you never once stood up for me. Not once. You let them define me, and you let me believe I was less." He stepped closer, voice breaking. "I see it now. I see how much I lost. I see you, really see you, and I hate myself for not seeing it then." I turned to face him. "I don't hate you, Kareem. I forgave you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to let you back in. You don't get to come here and ask for pieces of what I've built just because your life is hard now." He stood there for a long moment, shoulders slumped, the man I once loved reduced to someone I barely recognized. Then he nodded, turned, and walked back to his car. I watched him drive away, the dust settling behind him, and felt a strange peace wash over me. The confrontation wasn't about winning. It was about closing a chapter that had haunted me for too long. And in that moment, I realized I had won, not by taking something from him, but by refusing to give him any more of my peace. The silence that had once been my prison had become my sanctuary. I had learned to live in it, to breathe in it, to grow from it. And now, as the sun set over the lake, I knew that the woman who had once cried in bathrooms was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had faced the storm and walked through it unbroken. The regret didn't stop with Kareem. It rippled outward, touching every corner of the family that had once tried to erase me. A few weeks after his visit to the cabin, Mrs. Reynolds showed up at my apartment in Atlanta. She looked older than I remembered, her hair grayer, her hands trembling as she clutched a small brown paper box. I opened the door, surprised but unafraid. She didn't try to hug me or pretend we were long-lost friends. She just stood there, eyes red from crying, and said, "I came to apologize." I let her in. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd studied late into the night, rebuilt my life one quiet evening at a time. She didn't look around at the simple space, she just stared at her hands. "I was wrong," she began, voice cracking like thin ice. "I was cruel. I saw you as a threat to everything I thought our family should be. I mocked your faith, your clothes, your quiet ways because they made me uncomfortable. I thought if I pushed hard enough, you'd leave, and Kareem would find someone who fit my picture. But I was wrong. I broke something beautiful." Tears rolled down her cheeks, and for the first time, I saw real remorse, not the fake sweetness she'd used as a weapon for years. When the trust came out, I realized how much Dad loved you. He saw your heart when I refused to. And I hate myself for that. I listened without interrupting. She talked for nearly an hour, about her own fears, her rigid upbringing, the pressure to keep the family perfect. She admitted she had pushed Kareem toward Lila because she thought Lila was more like us. She cried harder when she said she had lost her son, not to me, but to his own guilt. "He's not the same," she whispered. "He's quiet now. He barely comes around. He told me he wishes he could take it all back." I felt a pang, but it wasn't for him. It was for the years we had all wasted on lies. When she finished, she pushed the box toward me. "This was from Dad. He wanted you to have it." Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a crescent moon charm, engraved with the words, "Faith endures." I slipped it on, the metal cool against my skin. "Thank you," I said simply. She looked at me, eyes pleading. "Can you ever forgive me?" I took a deep breath. "I forgave you the day I decided I was enough," I told her. "But forgiveness doesn't mean we go back to how things were. I have boundaries now. I have peace. And I'm keeping it." She nodded, tears falling freely. "I understand." She left quietly, the door clicking shut behind her. That night, I sat on my balcony, bracelet on my wrist, and let the emotions wash over me, anger, sadness, relief, and finally acceptance. The confrontation wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Their regret came too late for reconciliation, but it came at the right time for closure. I had built a life without them, and it was beautiful. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my own. And in that quiet moment, with the city lights twinkling below and the moon rising above, I knew I had won the only victory that mattered, the one over my own heart. The years of silence, the tears, the doubt, they hadn't broken me. They had forged me. And in that forging, I became someone even I could be proud of. The woman who had once cried in bathrooms was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had faced the storm and walked through it unbroken. The truth had emerged, not with vengeance, but with grace. And grace, I learned, is the most powerful revenge of all. Karma didn't arrive with thunderclaps or a courtroom showdown. It came quietly, steadily, like the slow turning of seasons in the Georgia countryside, inevitable and impossible to ignore. After Mrs. Reynolds's tearful visit to my apartment and Kareem's broken plea at the cabin, the family's world began to unravel in ways no one could have predicted. The first crack appeared with the legal fees. They had spent tens of thousands fighting the trust, hiring high-priced attorneys who promised they could prove the clause was invalid, that I was an outsider who had no right to Mr. Reynolds Sr.'s legacy. But the courts didn't see it that way. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense gaze, ruled in my favor without hesitation. "The intent of the testator is clear," she said during the hearing I didn't even attend. I let my attorney handle it, sitting at home with a cup of tea and my Quran open on my lap. The family appealed, of course, dragging it out for months, but the higher court upheld the decision. By the time the final papers were signed, their savings were depleted, the big house in Buckhead teetering on foreclosure. Mrs. Reynolds sold her jewelry, the pearl necklace she'd worn to every family event, the one she'd bragged was an heirloom, to cover the bills. Tanya lost her job around the same time. Turns out, her networking relied heavily on the family's reputation, and whispers about the messy trust fight spread through her social circles like wildfire. She called me once, voice slurred from what sounded like too much wine, begging for a loan. "Just until things settle," she said. I listened politely, then said, "I'm sorry you're going through this, Tanya. But I can't help." She hung up cursing, but I didn't feel triumph. I felt a quiet vindication, the kind that comes from knowing the universe balances its scales in its own time. Kareem was hit hardest. His marriage to Lila collapsed under the strain. She had always been about the lifestyle, the big house, the vacations, the image of success, and when the money dried up, so did her affection. They separated quietly, no big announcement, just a mutual decision, posted on social media that I saw by accident while scrolling through old mutual friends' updates. He moved back in with his parents, the same sprawling house that had once been my prison of silence. I heard from a cousin who still spoke to me occasionally that he was drinking more, working less, haunted by the what-ifs. "He talks about you sometimes," she said on the phone one evening. "Says you were the best thing that ever happened to him, and he blew it." I thanked her for the update but didn't dwell on it. Karma wasn't about their suffering, it was about the natural consequence of choices made in blindness. For me, justice looked different. It looked like the cabin becoming my retreat, a place where I hosted weekend retreats for women from the masjid, simple gatherings with tea, Quran readings, and stories of survival. I used part of the trust money to renovate it gently, added a small library with books on faith and resilience, planted a garden with herbs that reminded me of my mother's kitchen. The first retreat, I invited 5 women, including Noor, who was now in college on my scholarship. We sat on the porch at dusk, sharing our scars, the divorces, the losses, the humiliations, and weaving them into stories of strength. Noor looked at me across the circle and said, "Auntie Aisha, this place, it feels like home." I smiled, tears pricking my eyes, because that's what justice felt like, not revenge, but restoration. The money also let me expand my nonprofit dream. I registered it as Sisters Silence No More, a small organization offering counseling and legal aid for Muslim women facing family pressure or divorce. The first grant I applied for was approved within weeks, $50,000 to start workshops in Atlanta and online sessions for women across the South. I hired a part-time assistant, a young hijabi named Layla who had her own story of endurance, and together we built something real. Clients came slowly at first, a mother escaping an arranged marriage, a wife dealing with in-law abuse, a daughter mocked for her faith. Each one reminded me of my own journey, and helping them felt like closing a loop I didn't know was open. Justice wasn't the check in the bank or the deed to the land, it was seeing other women stand taller because of the path I had walked. One evening, as I locked up the community center after a workshop, a client stopped me in the parking lot. "You saved me," she said, hugging me tightly. No one else understood. I hugged her back, whispering, "You saved yourself. I just held the light." In that moment, with the streetlights casting long shadows and the city humming around us, I felt the full weight of karma, not as punishment, but as balance. The Reynolds had sown seeds of cruelty, and now they reaped isolation. I had sown silence and endurance, and now I reaped peace and purpose. As the dust settled on the family's downfall, the justice in my life bloomed in unexpected ways. I bought a modest house in a quiet Decatur neighborhood, not the flashy Buckhead style, but a cozy two-story with a backyard garden and a sunroom where I could pray without interruption. It was the first place I truly owned, paid for with the trust and my own savings, and moving in felt like claiming territory long denied. I painted the walls soft earth tones, hung artwork from local Muslim artists, and filled the shelves with books that had guided me through the dark years. My parents came down for the housewarming, bringing trays of baklava and stories from Michigan winters. My mother walked through the rooms, touching the walls like they were fragile, and said, "This is yours, Aisha. All yours." My father nodded, eyes misty, and added, "You built this with your heart." We laughed and cried that weekend, the kind of family time I had craved for years. Nor visited too, now a sophomore studying social work, and she helped me plant roses in the garden, red ones for strength, white ones for peace. "This is what karma looks like," she said as we dug into the soil, dirt under our nails. Not payback, but planting something beautiful from the pain. She was right. The Reynolds faded into the background. I heard snippets. Kareem had quit his job, started therapy, was trying to find himself in some self-help retreat in Asheville. Mrs. Reynolds downsized to a condo, her social calendar empty without the parties she once hosted. Tanya moved to Florida, chasing a fresh start, but rumors said she was struggling. I didn't seek the details, they came unbidden, like echoes from a life I had left behind. One day, a letter arrived from Kareem, not through a lawyer, but handwritten, postmarked from Asheville. I opened it on my sunroom floor, sunlight streaming through the windows. "Aisha," it began, "I don't expect a reply, but I need to write this. I see now what I lost, not just you, but the woman you are." The trust was the wake-up call I needed. I was blind, selfish, too afraid to stand up to my family. "I'm sorry for every time I let them hurt you, for every silence that cut deeper than words. I hope life has been kind to you. It should be." I read it twice, then folded it away in a drawer with the bracelet from Mr. Reynolds Sr. It wasn't closure, I had found that years ago, but it was acknowledgement. Justice meant they faced their mirrors, and I faced mine without shame. My nonprofit grew steadily. We expanded to virtual sessions, reaching women in rural Georgia and even up to Michigan. The first big donor was a tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, a hijabi CEO who read about us in a local paper and wired $100,000. "Your story inspired me," she wrote in the check note. With that, we hired more counselors, started a hotline, and hosted our first annual retreat at the cabin, 20 women, all survivors, sharing fireside stories under the stars. I spoke at the closing circle, my voice steady. "Karma isn't about them getting what they deserve. It's about us getting what we've always deserved: peace, purpose, power." The applause that followed wasn't for me, it was for all of us, a chorus of women who had endured and emerged. Personally, justice looked like small joys: morning runs along the Chattahoochee River, where the water rushed clean and free, Friday dinners with my sisters at the masjid, laughter echoing over plates of lamb tajin, quiet evenings journaling under a blanket, dreaming of writing my own book one day. I dated once, briefly, a kind doctor from the community who respected my boundaries, but it didn't lead anywhere, and that was okay. I wasn't rushing. I was living. The karma came full circle when Noor graduated. She dedicated her thesis to me, to Auntie Aisha, who taught me that silence can roar, and invited me to the ceremony. As I watched her cross the stage, cap and gown flowing, I felt tears of pride sting my eyes. This was justice, not the fall of others, but the rise of those we lift. The Reynolds? They were footnotes now, shadows in a story that had become mine alone. And in that ownership, I found the deepest justice of all, the kind that heals, not harms. Sitting here on the porch of my Decatur home on this quiet December evening in 2025, watching the Christmas lights twinkle across the street and feeling the cool breeze carry the faint scent of pine from a neighbor's tree, I realized that empowerment isn't a single moment of triumph. It's 1,000 quiet choices strung together like prayer beads, each one a deliberate step away from the version of myself that once believed silence meant weakness. I never imagined my story would end this way, not in bitterness or revenge, but in a gentle, unshakable peace that feels more like home than any house ever could. The cabin in North Georgia has become my second heart, a place I retreat to when the city feels too loud, where I sit by the lake and listen to the water lap against the shore, reminding me that healing is not a race but a rhythm. I've furnished it slowly, a bookshelf filled with Rumi, Maya Angelou, and the Quran, a small garden where I grow mint and roses, a hammock on the porch where I read under the stars. I host retreats there now, small gatherings for women from the masjid who need a weekend to breathe, to share, to heal. We sit around the fire, sip tea, read verses, and talk about the things we've survived. Noor comes most often. She's graduating next spring and has already accepted a job at a nonprofit in Atlanta. She told me last week, Auntie Aisha, I want to do what you did, help women find their voices. I hugged her so tight I could feel her heartbeat against mine, and in that moment, I knew the circle was complete. My nonprofit, Sisters Silence No More, has grown beyond what I dreamed. We now have a small office in Midtown, a team of 3 full-time counselors, and partnerships with local mosques and women's shelters. Last month, we launched a podcast, My Voice, Steady and Calm, sharing stories like mine, anonymized but real. The first episode was about quiet endurance, and the messages poured in, women from Texas, Florida, even California, saying, I thought I was alone. Thank you for showing me I'm not. I read every one, tears in my eyes, knowing that the pain I once carried had become medicine for others. I don't hide the hard parts anymore. I tell them about the nights I cried in the guest room, about the family gatherings where I felt invisible, about the day I signed the divorce papers and walked out of a life that no longer fit. But I also tell them about the mornings I woke up and chose myself, about the walks, the studies, the prayers that rebuilt me brick by brick. I tell them that forgiveness is for you, not them, that boundaries are not walls but gardens that protect what matters most. And I tell them that the truth always speaks, even if it takes years to find its voice. My parents visit more often now. They stay in the guest room I keep ready for them, and we cook together, my mother teaching me new recipes, my father telling old stories from his youth. They look at me with a pride that makes my chest ache in the best way. You're our miracle, my mother says every time she leaves. I smile and say, we all are. I've started dating again, slowly, carefully. His name is Omar, a pediatrician from the community who shares my love for books and quiet mornings. He respects my hijab, my faith, my boundaries. We talk for hours, walk the Chattahoochee trails, and pray together sometimes. There's no rush. I'm not looking for someone to complete me, I'm looking for someone who celebrates the wholeness I've built. Whether it lasts or not, I'm okay. I've learned that love should never ask you to shrink. I've also started writing, really writing. Not just journals, but chapters for a book I hope to publish one day, Silent Strength, a journey from humiliation to healing. It's not about revenge, it's about reclaiming. Every word feels like a release, like finally speaking the truth that waited so long inside me. I don't know if it will sell, but it doesn't matter. Writing it is healing me all over again. The woman who once cried in bathrooms is gone. In her place stands someone who has faced the storm and walked through it unbroken. The years of silence, the tears, the doubt, they hadn't broken me. They had forged me. And in that forging, I became someone even I could be proud of. The truth didn't just change my circumstances, it changed the story I told myself about who I was. And that, more than anything, was the greatest victory of all. As I close this chapter, not the end of my life, but the end of this story, I want to leave you with the same truth that carried me through the darkest days: you are enough. Exactly as you are. Your faith, your modesty, your quiet resilience, they are not weaknesses, they are your superpowers. I spent years believing I had to change to be loved, to fit in, to be accepted. I learned the hard way that the only acceptance that truly matters is the one you give yourself. The Reynolds? They're still out there, living with the consequences of their choices. Kareem has started therapy, from what I hear. Mrs. Reynolds sold the big house and moved into a smaller place in Marietta. Tanya is trying to rebuild in Florida. I don't follow their lives anymore, I don't need to. Their story is no longer mine. I've let go of the anger, the hurt, the need for them to pay. What I hold on to instead is gratitude, for the pain that taught me my worth, for the silence that gave me space to grow, for the truth that finally spoke when I was ready to hear it. My days now are simple and full. I wake with Far, pray, make coffee, and sit on the porch with my journal. I go to work, where I help women like me find their footing. I come home to a house that feels warm and lived in, filled with plants, books, and the scent of jasmine from the candle I light every evening. I run along the river trails most mornings, the wind in my face, my body strong and free. I laugh more now, deep, belly laughs with Noor, with my sisters at the masjid, with Omar when he tells a silly joke. I cry less, but when I do, it's clean, healing tears, not the silent ones that used to drown me. I've learned that empowerment isn't about never falling, it's about rising every time you do. It's about choosing yourself, over and over, until the choice becomes instinct. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own storm, whether it's family pressure, a toxic marriage, or just the weight of being unseen, know this: the storm will pass. You will pass through it, not around it, and on the other side, you'll find a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, kinder to yourself. You don't need permission to heal. You don't need approval to thrive. You just need to start, one breath, one step, one quiet choice at a time. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If my story helped even one person feel less alone, then every tear, every silent night, every moment of doubt was worth it. Remember, the truth always speaks. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it roars. But when it finally speaks for you, listen. And then live. Fully, freely, fearlessly. Because you deserve it. You always did. And if you're still here, still listening, still breathing, know that you're already on the path to your own new beginning. Keep going. You've got this. And so do I. The woman who once cried in bathrooms is gone. In her place stands someone who has faced the storm and walked through it unbroken. The years of silence, the tears, the doubt, they hadn't broken me. They had forged me. And in that forging, I became someone even I could be proud of. The truth didn't just change my circumstances, it changed the story I told myself about who I was. And that, more than anything, was the greatest victory of all.